Hello everyone, how are we all doing? As the nights grow longer and the cold creeps in, the Christmas season approaches, a time of peace, joy, and festive traditions. But what if I told you there's a darker side to the holidays, a side steeped in shadow, where the warmth of the season is pierced by chilling legends told around the campfire? Not all Christmas tales are cheerful. Some speak of a figure who doesn't bring gifts or joy, but fear. A figure of dark origin. A figure known only as Krampus. My name is Mason, and you're watching Char TV. Before we dive into tonight's stories, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a chilling tale. Tonight we'll explore 3 terrifying Krampus stories, tales of mystery, misfortune, and dark bargains that will make you think twice about the holiday season. So turn down the lights, wrap yourself in a blanket, and prepare to hear the tales of Krampus, the Christmas demon. And if you listen closely, you might just hear the faint jingle of his bells. Let's begin. Gather around the fire and let me tell you a tale whispered among the oldest villagers of Tyrol. A story that has sent shivers down spines for generations. It dates back to the 16th century, when the nights were darker, the winters harsher, and the line between the natural and the supernatural was perilously thin. In a small village nestled deep within the snow-capped Alps, the Yule season was both a time of celebration and of deep-rooted fear. The villagers were a hardy folk, accustomed to the perils of mountain life, but there was one threat they could neither see nor predict. It began subtly, almost innocently, with the arrival of a stranger. He came as the first snows fell, a tall figure cloaked in worn robes that seemed to blend with the shadows. His face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, and his eyes, when glimpsed, were dark and unreadable. He spoke little, purchased modest supplies, and paid with ancient coins that glinted oddly in the light. The villagers, ever hospitable, asked no questions. They offered him shelter in the old mill at the edge of the village, a place long abandoned after the miller had vanished years prior. As December wore on, the air grew colder, and a heavy silence settled over the village. Children, usually so lively even in the depths of winter, began to complain of strange dreams. They spoke of a figure lurking at the foot of their beds, of whispers promising sweets and toys if only they would follow into the night. Parents dismissed these tales as nightmares, the product of overactive imaginations fueled by festive excitement. Then, one morning, little Lucas was nowhere to be found. His bed was neatly made, his boots missing from beside the door. His mother swore she had tucked him in the night before, singing lullabies until his eyes fluttered closed. Panic ensued. The men of the village scoured the forests, calling his name until their voices were hoarse, but not a trace of the boy could be found. The stranger, when questioned, merely shook his head. "Children are curious," he murmured in a voice that seemed to carry the weight of ages. "The woods are deep and the nights long." Days later, another child disappeared. This time Anna, the baker's daughter. Her window was left ajar, snowflakes dusting the sill. Clutched in her bedsheets was a small, carved figure, a grotesque creature with horns and a lolling tongue. The elders recognized it immediately. Krampus, the Christmas demon of old legends, said to punish naughty children and carry them away in his sack. Fear tightened its grip on the village. Doors were bolted, candles kept burning through the night. The church bell rang daily, calling for prayers and protection. Yet, despite their efforts, more children vanished. Each time, a small effigy of Krampus was left behind, more intricately carved than the last, as if mocking the villagers' helplessness. One stormy night, a young mother named Marta decided she could bear it no longer. Clutching her rosary, she braved the howling winds to confront the stranger at the old mill. The door creaked open at her touch, revealing a space lit by flickering candles. Strange symbols adorned the walls, and the air was thick with the scent of wax and something more pungent, sulfuric. In the center of the room stood the stranger, his back to her. "Where are our children?" Marta demanded, her voice quavering yet resolute. He turned slowly, and as the shadows peeled away, his true form was revealed. His face was not that of a man, but a beast, twisted horns spiraling from his forehead, eyes glowing like embers, and a mouth stretched into a sinister grin. Chains hung from his wrists, clattering softly as he took a step forward. "Your children are with me," he rasped, his voice echoing unnaturally, "punished for the sins of their fathers and mothers." Marta stumbled back, horror rooting her to the spot. Summoning the last of her courage, she raised the rosary, its crucifix catching the candlelight. The creature recoiled, a hiss escaping his lips. "Faith will not save you," he snarled, "for it is your own deeds that have brought this upon you." With a sudden gust, the candles extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. When the villagers found Marta the next morning, she was muttering incoherently, her hair streaked with white. She spoke of chains and bells, of the Krampus dragging souls into the depths. Desperation turned to resignation. The village priest proposed a cleansing ritual, an appeal to higher powers for mercy. As they gathered in the church, a cacophony erupted outside, bells jingling chaotically, the clamour of chains scraping against stone. The doors blew open, and a frigid wind extinguished the sacred candles. Silhouetted against the swirling snow stood Krampus, more monstrous than any tale had described. Behind him, shadows flickered, tiny figures with vacant eyes, the missing children transformed into wraiths under his command. "You have forsaken the old ways," Krampus declared, "forgotten the balance between light and dark. Now you face the consequences." The villagers could only watch in terror as he advanced. Some fell to their knees, others clung to each other, tears freezing on their cheeks. But just as Krampus reached the threshold, the church bell tolled once more, a pure, resonant sound that cut through the chaos. The eldest villager, a woman of nearly 100 winters, stepped forward. In her hands she held a relic, a simple branch of birch tied with red ribbon. "Begone, spirit of vengeance," she commanded. "By this token I remind you of the old pact." Krampus paused, his expression unreadable. After a tense moment, he nodded slowly. "The old pact is honored," he rumbled, "this time." With that, he turned and vanished into the storm, the children disappearing with him. The village was spared further torment, but at a terrible cost. In the years that followed, the villagers revived the ancient traditions, leaving offerings and respecting the balance between celebration and solemnity. They told and retold the tale, ensuring that no one would forget the price of negligence. And so, when winter nights grow long and the winds whisper through the pines, the people of Tyrol still leave a birch branch by their doors and a candle burning in the window, for they know that Krampus walks the forests, chains at the ready, listening for the faintest sign that the old ways have been forgotten. Remember this tale when the shadows lengthen and the cold settles in. Keep your traditions close and your hearts humble, lest you hear the jingle of bells and the scrape of chains in the dead of night. Gather close, friends, and let me recount a tale that has haunted the snowy streets of Bavaria for decades. A story of festivity turned to fear, of tradition tainted by terror. It all began during the Krampuslauf of 1965 in a quaint town nestled among the dark forests and frosty peaks. The Krampuslauf, or Krampus Run, was the highlight of the year. Villagers and visitors alike donned elaborate costumes, transforming into the horned, fearsome Krampus, counterpart to St. Nicholas. With masks carved from ancient wood and suits of goat hide, they paraded through the winding streets, jingling cowbells and rattling chains to ward off evil spirits and remind the naughty of their misdeeds. That year, a newcomer named Joseph arrived just days before the festival. Tall and gaunt, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold shadows, he claimed to be a craftsman seeking inspiration from local traditions. The townsfolk, ever welcoming, embraced him as one of their own. Joseph was quiet but courteous, often seen sketching the old buildings or wandering the forest's edge at dusk. On the night of the Krampuslauf, the town was alive with excitement. Snowflakes danced in the air, lanterns cast a warm glow, and the scent of mulled wine wafted through the streets. The participants gathered in the town square, their Krampus costumes more elaborate than ever before. Among them was Joseph, who had crafted a mask so lifelike it sent a chill down the spine of those who glimpsed it. Twisted horns, matted fur, and eyes that seemed almost real. As the procession began, drums beat rhythmically, and the Krampuses marched, leaped and howled, delighting and frightening the onlookers in equal measure. Children shrieked with a mix of fear and joy, hiding behind their parents only to peek out moments later. But as the parade wound its way through the narrow streets, a strange unease settled over the crowd. The bells sounded harsher, the shadows deeper. The laughter faded, replaced by nervous whispers. One by one, the street lamps flickered and died, plunging sections of the route into darkness. Some thought it was a prank, part of the festivities, but others felt a gnawing dread. Amidst the confusion, Joseph, the tall Krampus with the unnervingly realistic mask, broke away from the group. Those nearby saw him slip into an alleyway, his chains clattering against the cobblestones. Concerned, a fellow participant named Lucas followed, calling out, "Joseph! Are you all right?" There was no reply, only the distant echo of bells. Lucas turned the corner into the alley, but Joseph was nowhere to be seen. Instead, he found deep hoof prints burned into the snow, leading away from the village and toward the forest. Alarmed, Lucas returned to the main street to alert the others, but the procession had descended into chaos. Several Krampus participants were missing, and whispers spread that children had vanished from the crowd. Parents frantically searched for their little ones, calling their names into the icy night. The mayor hastily organized search parties. Groups of townsfolk, their lanterns bobbing like will-o'-the-wisps, ventured into the forest. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches like skeletal fingers against the sky. The only sounds were the crunch of snow underfoot and the distant, haunting jingle of bells. Deep within the woods, they found the missing Krampuses. Their costumes were torn, masks discarded, eyes wide with terror. They babbled incoherently about being chased by something, a creature that moved like smoke and shadow. "It was him," one whispered. "Joseph, but not Joseph." Further ahead, near an ancient gnarled tree known in local legend as the Hangman's Oak, they found the missing children, cold, scared, but unharmed. They huddled together, eyes glazed as if in a trance. When asked what happened, they spoke of a tall Krampus who lured them away with promises of gifts and sweets, only to vanish when they reached the tree. As they guided the children back, a low, guttural laugh echoed through the forest. The searchers quickened their pace, hearts pounding. Behind them, they could hear the snapping of branches and the unmistakable sound of chains dragging through the snow. One man, Hans, dared to look back. What he saw drained the blood from his face. A towering figure, larger than any man, with horns that curved like a stag's and eyes that burned like embers. Its tongue, long and serpentine, flicked out as it grinned, revealing sharp teeth gleaming in the moonlight. "Run!" Hans screamed, spurring the others into a panicked sprint. The creature gave chase, its movements unnaturally swift, closing the distance effortlessly. The bells attached to its belt rang discordantly, each peal reverberating through the forest like a death knell. Just as the entity was upon them, the town's church bell tolled midnight. The sound resonated through the air, causing the creature to halt abruptly. It snarled, clutching its ears, before retreating into the darkness with a final menacing glare. The villagers stumbled back into town, breathless and shaken. They gathered in the church, seeking solace and protection. The priest led them in prayer until the first light of dawn chased away the lingering shadows. The next day they searched for Joseph, but found no trace. His room at the inn was untouched, his belongings minimal. A sketchbook filled with unsettling drawings of the Krampus, the town, and the villagers themselves, rendered with disturbing accuracy. Rumors spread that Joseph was not a man at all, but Krampus in disguise, come to punish the town for losing sight of the true meaning behind the tradition. Others believed he had summoned the creature through dark rituals, intending to harness its power. In the years that followed, the town's Krampuslauf was a subdued affair. The costumes were less fearsome, the celebrations more cautious. Parents kept their children close, and the forest was deemed off-limits after dark. But some nights, when the wind howled and the snow fell heavy, villagers swore they could hear the distant jingle of bells and the faint laughter of something not quite human. They spoke in hushed tones of shadows seen from the corner of the eye, of hoofprints that appeared in freshly fallen snow without a trail leading to or from them. The Hangman's Oak became a place of superstition. Offerings were left at its base, bread, coins, and trinkets, in hopes of appeasing whatever lurked in the woods. The tale of that fateful Krampuslauf became a cautionary story, a reminder that some traditions carry weight beyond mere festivity. So, as we sit here by the warmth of the fire, remember this tale when the season turns cold and the Krampus Lauf approaches. Keep your wits about you, stay close to the light, and if you see a stranger with eyes that hold shadows, think twice before welcoming him with open arms. For not all who wear the mask of Krampus are merely celebrating. A few might just be the creature itself, waiting for the perfect moment to remind us that legends often have a grain of truth. And should you ever hear the sound of bells when no one is near, or catch a glimpse of a horned silhouette among the trees, resist the urge to follow. Instead, hurry home, light a candle, and be grateful that, for tonight at least, you are safe. Let me share with you a tale that has haunted the whispering pines and snow-clad peaks of Bavaria since the early 1800s. A story of desperation, deceit, and the dark consequences of bargaining with forces beyond our understanding. In a secluded village tucked away in the shadow of the mountains, there lived a farmer named Wilhelm. He was a hard-working man, his hands roughened by years of toil, but despite his efforts, misfortune clung to him like a relentless spectre. The soil was barren, his crops failed season after season, and his livestock dwindled from disease and predation. His wife Elise watched with a heavy heart as Wilhelm grew more despondent, the weight of their plight etched deep into the lines of his face. One frigid evening, as the first snows of December blanketed the ground, Wilhelm wandered into the forest, the gnarled branches twisting overhead like skeletal fingers. The village was abuzz with preparations for Krampusnacht, the night when Krampus roamed to punish the wicked. Children were warned to behave, and doors were adorned with sprigs of holly for protection. But Wilhelm had little mind for folklore. His thoughts were consumed by the hunger gnawing at his belly and the despair festering in his soul. As he trudged deeper into the woods, a strange sound caught his ear. The faint tinkling of bells, accompanied by the rhythmic clatter of chains. He paused, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. From the shadows emerged a towering figure, half man, half beast, with curling horns and eyes that glowed like embers. It was Krampus himself, the embodiment of ancient terrors. Wilhelm's instinct screamed at him to flee, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. Krampus regarded him with a predatory curiosity. "Why do you wander these woods alone on Krampusnacht, mortal?" the creature rasped, its voice like the crackle of burning logs. Swallowing his fear, Wilhelm replied, "I seek a way to save my family. Misfortune has cursed us, and I am desperate." Krampus tilted his head, a sinister smile revealing sharp, gleaming teeth. "Desperation can lead men to dark places," he mused. "What would you give to change your fate?" "Anything," Wilhelm whispered, the weight of the word hanging heavily in the cold air. Krampus's eyes flickered with malevolent delight. "A bargain, then. I shall grant you wealth untold, prosperity for your farm, and health for your kin. In return, you will give me your firstborn child." Wilhelm's heart clenched. He and Elise had longed for a child, but had been unable to conceive. The thought of finally having a son or daughter, only to lose them, was unbearable. Yet the promise of immediate relief was too enticing. Perhaps, he reasoned, they would remain childless, and the bargain would cost them nothing. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Agreed. Krampus extended a clawed hand, and Wilhelm grasped it reluctantly. The creature's touch was icy, sending a jolt through his arm. "It is done," Krampus declared, before vanishing into the darkness, leaving only the lingering echo of his laughter. Upon returning home, Wilhelm found his farm transformed. The fields were lush, the granaries overflowing, and healthy animals filled the barns. Elise met him at the door, her face alight with joy. "It's a miracle," she exclaimed. "Our fortunes have changed overnight." Months passed in blissful prosperity. The villagers marveled at Wilhelm's good fortune, and envy simmered beneath their praise. Then, one morning, Elise announced with tears of happiness that she was with child. While she rejoiced, a shadow passed over Wilhelm's face. The weight of his bargain pressed heavily upon him, but he kept his dread hidden, not wishing to spoil his wife's happiness. As the months wore on, Wilhelm became consumed with finding a way to thwart Krampus. He sought counsel from wise men, delved into forbidden texts, and performed protective rituals. Finally, he devised a plan. If they baptized the child immediately after birth, the sanctity of the sacrament might shield the baby from any dark claims. The night their son Johann was born, a fierce snowstorm raged outside. The howling wind battered the shutters, and the village seemed eerily silent, as if holding its breath. Wilhelm wasted no time. Under the cover of darkness, he and Elise wrapped the newborn tightly and braved the tempest to reach the small chapel at the edge of the village. Father Anselm, a kindly old priest, was startled by their arrival, but agreed to perform the baptism then and there. As the holy water touched Johann's forehead, Wilhelm felt a fleeting sense of relief. The rite was done. Surely Krampus could no longer claim his due. But fate is not so easily cheated. On Christmas Eve, as the village celebrated in warm homes filled with candlelight and laughter, a palpable unease settled over Wilhelm. The air was thick with tension, and the silence outside was profound, as if the world were holding its breath. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed through the house. Wilhelm's blood ran cold. He opened the door to find no one there, only the swirling snow and the darkness beyond. Then came the sound, the unmistakable jingle of bells, followed by the scraping of chains against the frozen ground. From the shadows emerged Krampus, more imposing than before, his horns nearly brushing the eaves, his eyes blazing with anger. "You dare to deceive me!" Krampus growled, his voice reverberating like thunder. "Our bargain was struck, and you seek to break it?" Wilhelm stood his ground, though terror gripped his heart. "My son is baptized. You have no claim over him." Krampus bared his teeth in a fearsome grin. "You think a mere ritual can protect you? A bargain is bound by blood and soul." Elise appeared behind Wilhelm, clutching Johann to her chest. "Leave us," she cried, her voice trembling yet defiant. Krampus's gaze shifted to her, and he sniffed the air. Ah, the mother, such love, such devotion. He leaned forward. "Perhaps a new deal can be made." "Take me instead," Wilhelm blurted out desperately. "Spare my son and my wife. I'll go willingly." Krampus considered this, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "A father's sacrifice. How noble." He chuckled darkly. "Very well, your soul in exchange for theirs." Before Elise could protest, Krampus seized Wilhelm's arm with a vice-like grip. "It is settled." A whirlwind of shadows enveloped them, and Wilhelm's screams were swallowed by the night. Elise collapsed to her knees, sobbing, as the apparition vanished, leaving no trace but the rapidly fading echo of bells. Days turned into weeks, and Wilhelm did not return. The villagers searched but found no sign of him. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some claimed he had run off, others suspected foul play. Only Elise knew the horrific truth, but who would believe such a tale? As she tried to rebuild their lives, strange occurrences began to plague the household. At night, the distant sound of chains would lull Johann to sleep, and shadows danced unnaturally along the walls. Elise sensed a presence watching, waiting. 1 year later, on the eve of Krampusnacht, Johann fell ill. His cheeks flushed, his tiny body racked with fever. Elise tended to him tirelessly, but his condition worsened. As midnight approached, the temperature in the room plummeted. Frost crept along the windows, and the flames in the hearth extinguished with a hiss. Cradling Johann, Elise whispered prayers, tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, a familiar jingle of bells echoed from the darkness. Krampus materialized at the foot of the bed, his form more shadow than substance. "You have come to take him," Elise whispered, resignation hollowing her voice. Krampus nodded slowly. "A debt unpaid remains a stain, but fear not, he will suffer no more." Despair turned to fury within Elise. "You have taken my husband and now my child. Have you no mercy?" "Mercy?" Krampus echoed, his eyes flickering. "I am the consequence of broken promises, the collector of forsaken oaths." Elise tightened her grip on Johann. "Then take me too. Let us be together in this life or the next." For a moment Krampus seemed to consider her plea. "So be it," he intoned. In a swirl of dark mist, Krampus enveloped them both. The room filled with a blinding light, and when it faded, they were gone. The house stood silent and empty, a hollow shell bearing the weight of untold sorrow. The next morning, the villagers found the Müller home abandoned. No trace of Elise or Johann remained, save for a single small handprint, scorched into the wood of the cradle. Fear gripped the village, and they spoke in hushed tones of curses and retribution. Father Anselm gathered the townsfolk, urging them to remember the sanctity of their traditions and the perils of straying from the righteous path. That year and every year thereafter, the villagers observed Krampusnacht with a newfound reverence. They hung protective talismans over their doors, lit candles in their windows, and left offerings at the forest's edge to appease the ancient spirit. Some say that on cold winter nights, when the wind howls through the trees, you can hear the faint echo of Wilhelm's anguished cries carried on the breeze. Others claim to have seen a shadowy figure, horned and hulking, roaming the outskirts of the village, a silent sentinel reminding all of the price of broken promises. And so, this tale is passed down through generations as a cautionary whisper, a reminder that desperation can lead even the best of us down dark paths, that bargains struck in shadows carry a heavy toll, and that some forces are not to be trifled with. As we sit here by the warmth of the fire, remember Wilhelm's folly. Hold your loved ones close, honor your word, and when Krampusnacht comes, be mindful of the shadows, for if you hear the distant jingle of bells or the clatter of chains in the dead of night, it may already be too late. And there you have it, 3 terrifying tales of Krampus, the shadow of Christmas who reminds us all that the holidays aren't just about cheer, but also about consequence. Whether it's a haunting in the woods, a sinister parade gone wrong, or a deal with darkness that ends in tragedy, these stories show that some legends are more than just myths. They're warnings. So, as you prepare for the festive season, remember to keep your traditions alive, light a candle against the dark, and maybe, just maybe, leave a little offering by your door. After all, you never know what might be lurking in the shadows. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want more chilling stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to stay up to date with all our latest content. I've been Mason, and this is Char TV. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.